Welcome to part 2 of my Digimon Digital Monsters Episode 1 review. The one positive I can say about this is that while the characters aren't very strong, at least not now, there are quite a few of them. There's a wide spectrum of personalities and character types here, and that's one of the things that makes this show still, at the very least, interesting to me. There are a lot of different characters, and they have to learn how to work together. They fight through different things because they think about things differently, and it's actually pretty interesting to watch, even if the characters do get stereotyped for laughs. So anyway, after we're introduced to these characters in the most shallow way possible, the show actually starts. After the freak snowstorm, an aurora occurs, which, again, is extremely irregular, which all the characters start to comment on. Once again, they feel the need to try and make this as funny as possible when it's really not called for. 7 strange devices streak through the sky and land on the ground in front of the characters. They pick them up and examine them, but before they can really discover anything, a gigantic tidal wave appears out of nowhere, picks them up, and sucks them into another world. Which would probably be a pretty terrifying experience, but I guess these characters just find the whole thing very funny because all they can do is crack jokes. And I know I'm repeating myself a lot in regards to that flaw in this show, but it really is the number one thing that sticks out to me as a problem here when rewatching it now. So the 7 characters get scattered across a small area in an alien world. Tai is the first one to wake up, and he's greeted by a strange creature on his chest. Naturally, Tai freaks out at this, but after a few minutes, calms down when he sees how polite and nice the creature is being. I like how this scene was done for the most part, and it kind of comes back to one of my favorite things about this show. These kids are completely normal, and they come from a world that we can completely relate to. In fact, the world that they come from is our Earth, in every sense of the word, so we can completely relate to these kids. Think about the world of the Pokemon anime for a second. 10-year-old kids are pretty much told to go out on a worldwide adventure by themselves with strange creatures that they're supposed to capture and tame. Is this anything like anything we do in the real world? No. Can we relate to it at all? No. Do any of the characters in that show find this whole thing strange in the slightest? No. And that's the difference. And that's the main reason why, over time, I ended up preferring this show. It's simply much easier to relate to these characters because they're so much like normal human beings. Like us, in fact. And they react to these situations sort of like how we would probably react. Anyway, the strange creature named Koromon seems very excited to meet Tai, knows his name, and claims to have been waiting for him. But we don't learn much else quite yet. Now, basically, over the course of the rest of the episode, the other 6 characters meet up with Tai, and each of them has their own creature. Most of them have gotten over the initial shock of this whole situation. I assume they freaked out off screen, except for Joe, who is still freaking out because that's just what he does. Yeah. Also interspersed throughout all of these reintroductions and technically introduction to the creatures, they run into an obstacle in the form of Kuwagamon. And I gotta say, I really hate the whole thing where they put Mon at the end of every name. It just makes everything sound really corny. But that's neither here nor there, really. If you can't live with that, you're not going to be able to live with this show. Now, this creature is much bigger than any of the 7 our main characters have run into, who are all about the size of a football, and find themselves pretty much outmatched by this gigantic bug. So, reintroducing the characters back to the group is interspersed by them running away from this giant creature, hiding in trees, and slowly becoming acclimated to their new world. I don't have a ton interesting to say about this scene in general. It's just sort of happening. We get reintroduced to the characters, and they're running away from this creature. That's really all I can say about it, beyond the fact that there continues to be stereotyping of characters, and the constant need to crack a joke at every possible opportunity. What I do like, though, is that we, the audience, are, like the characters, thrown into this situation without being told anything. There wasn't any opening narration that told us exactly what was going on and exactly what the kids would be running into. There was never a moment in these first several episodes where we learned what was going on. Like the characters who have no idea what's going on, we don't either. We're just along for the ride, and eventually we will find out what's going on, but for now, it's just a bunch of stuff happening. And I actually do like that. It doesn't give us any clues that the kids themselves do not get. Finally, the 7 kids get trapped on a cliff with apparently nowhere to go and seem inevitably ready to become bug food when their 7 creatures evolve. Being that this is the first time they evolve in the whole series, the show feels the need to make it a big production and spend several minutes, but the fact that all 7 of them do it at the same time just makes for an incredible amount of filler, which is why most of the things I said in this 2-part review had to do with the show in general as it was being introduced, rather than about the episode itself. When you take out the character introductions, the character reintroductions, the introduction to the world, and the evolution sequence, there's really very little going on in this episode. And it's understandable, certainly. You need to introduce your show and the characters and what's going on to some degree, but I'm simply just saying it is what it is. There's not a lot going on in this episode. So, after an unbearably long evolution sequence, we see that the creatures have now become considerably more varied, bigger, and more importantly, more powerful. Yes, they fight, for any of you who missed that. So, they momentarily beat back the large bug creature by ganging up on him, which impresses the kids and only raises more questions in their mind as to what the hell is going on here. However, Kuwagamon isn't permanently defeated and comes back moments later, breaks the cliff off, and sends the 7 kids and creatures plummeting down to a beachy area. And the episode ends on that cliffhanger. Now, obviously, this being the first episode, a lot of stuff gets introduced here. And some of it I like, and some of it I didn't like, as was said earlier in this review. But once again, very little actually happens in this episode. Take out the character introductions and the evolution sequence, like I said, and basically it comes down to kids getting sucked into another world and getting chased around for a few minutes. There's really not a lot to say here, but it will get better, and I'll have more to say, probably, about future episodes. But for now, that's my review of episode number 1. Thank you.